Can we talk a little bit about your personal experience, Dad? So
Yes.
for those of you that have not heard this line come out of my mouth or my father's mouth at some point in time, he spent 40 plus years in retail automotive, selling cars, running dealerships. You, however, Dad, choose to lease vehicles, at
Yes.
least your most recent vehicles, you've chosen to lease them. You have bought cars in the past, you financed them. You leased your Mazda. Help us understand what made you decide to lease instead of buying. What do you like about leasing? What do you dislike about leasing?
What I like about leasing is that there's a fixed term. So what do I mean by that? The sweet spot for most leases is usually between 24 months to 36 months. What it means for somebody that drives 10 to 12, maybe even 15,000 miles a year is during the course of the lease, they will have a vehicle, if it's 12,000 miles a year, that is under warranty for the whole time that they are driving that vehicle. So they'll have a fixed payment. They'll know the day they sign up for that lease, what they can buy it for at the end of the lease. That's the residual value. So they can kind of base what they want to do on the future on knowing what the future value is assigned to that vehicle. You'll have a payment that's lower than a purchase, and you'll always be under warranty. So for someone who likes to drive a new car every 2 to 3 years, leasing, in my opinion, is the best way to do it, assuming, of course, that you buy into the premise that you will always have a car payment. When you lease a vehicle, you negotiate the selling price of the vehicle to the lease company. Okay. So if the car is $40,000, you negotiate just like you're buying the car, and maybe you get that down to, I don't know, $36,000. That's how much the leasing company is going to pay for the car. Then we know what the residual is, and they subtract the residual value, which is the future value of the vehicle, from the selling price. That's known as the depreciation. That's divided by the number of months that you're actually leasing the vehicle. So the lower you can make that selling price, the lower the amount of actual depreciation is going to be. So the lower the payment's going to be. And most brands, not all brands, most brands, as part of the acquisition fee, because there is an acquisition fee that a leasing company charges for putting the lease together. Many of the captive lenders, that acquisition fee, whatever it may be, in many cases it's $695 or $995, whatever it is, but in many of those cases, that includes gap insurance on the lease itself, so that if there is an issue where the vehicle's totaled, you as the customer don't have to worry about if there's a difference between what the insurance company will pay and what is still owed, who's responsible. For many of the lease companies, there's the gap insurance built into it, and you don't have to worry about it. You want to look into that as well as to whether or not that leasing company provides gap insurance. If they don't, you might want to consider it. Okay, so now you're an old fart, and now you need Medicare, and you're thinking to yourself, where do I go? What do I do? Well, if you're like me, you don't really know where to go. And what's really better? Is it the Medicare Advantage or Supplement? I found a company called Chapter. They asked me a few questions, and before you know it, in 30 minutes, I got much better coverage at a cheaper price. And it turns out millions of others have coverage that's costing them thousands of dollars more than they should be paying. They looked at every option for me and saved me $91 a month on my Medicare supplement. $91 a month that I get to put towards, I don't know, a nice dinner out. I mean, I've earned it. I deserve it. If you're on Medicare, or will soon be, call them at 557-207-0445, or if you prefer, go online and go to askchapter.org/CarEdge and ask Chapter if they can save you money. It's simple, it's quick, and these guys are honest, unlike your typical car salesman.
Leasing still includes maintenance, right?
You are responsible to maintain the vehicle. You aren't allowed to really customize the vehicle unless it enhances the value of the vehicle. If it detracts from the value of the vehicle, you can't do it. And you are responsible for normal wear and tear. So what is normal wear and tear? Well, every lease company will have a guide, so you can ask when you're considering going into a lease, well, what does this lease company consider normal wear and tear? And the dealership can probably pull up all that information for you. But I know, like at Mini, it was door dings couldn't be bigger than a quarter, scratches couldn't be more than 2 inches or whatever it was. If you had a minor fender bender, well, you're not supposed to bring the vehicle back with the minor fender bender. If it needs body work, you're supposed to get the body work done. You have certain obligations in the lease, and if there is excess wear and tear that you didn't take care of, like you bring the car back and it needs tires, they're going to charge you for the tires, because in your lease agreement, it's going to say that it has to have at least 432nd tread depth when you bring it back. If it's less than that, there's a charge for the tires. If the alloy wheels are scuffed, there's a charge to repair the alloy wheels. So
there is a nice aspect to that. If you do buy your lease at the end of the term, you know everything, that all the miles that have been put on it, the maintenance history. It's a high quality used car if you've taken care of it.
yeah, there isn't anything you don't know about that vehicle. And anytime you typically buy a used car, you really have no idea as to how the previous owner drove it and maintained it. Now, in many cases, there could be a Carfax that will show when maintenance was done, but you don't know how they drove it. You don't know where they drove it. You don't know if they drove it through floodwaters. There's lots of things you don't know.
Does the money factor change based on someone's credit?
The short answer to that is yes. The money factor is based on credit tiers. Let's say the money factor is 0.00150 if you're at tier 1, and that would be somebody 740 and above with their auto FICO score. If you fall into a slightly lower tier, that 0.000150 might turn into 0.000175.
Here's a perfect example, Dad. Tier 1 on an Acura MDX, the current money factor, you can see it right here for a 36-month term, 0.0028, which is the APR of 6.72% versus tier 2, to your point on the credit score, Bob's 36-month is 0.00325, 7.8%. This is incredible that we just have this data freely accessible to folks. Strongly recommend leasing only from the manufacturer's financial arm rather than a private bank. Usually better prices and easier turn-in process. Would love to hear Pops' opinion.
There are only a few banks out there today that actually participate in leasing as compared to what it used to be. The banks that are doing it are not nearly as forgiving as the captive lenders for the manufacturers that are doing it. And typically, the captive lenders will offer better programs than private banks, although there are times where some of the private banks will offer a better program. There's a greater likelihood that a captive lender will overlook some of the excess wear and tear to some degree than a private bank would. So especially
that's the turn-in process that you're
especially when you're turning it in and you're leasing another vehicle from that captive lender. There we are. I don't know. I don't know what the hell the question was, but I don't know. I spewed some nonsense around it.